Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club Podcast, where every month we pick a genre, we pick a filmmaker, we pick an actor, we pick something to talk about, and this month we're talking about anime. And today, we're talking about...
Akira.
Tetsuo Kaneda. Akira.
Have you been waiting all day to do that?
You have no idea. The Tetsuo Kaneda meme is great. That is ancient internet.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to look into it.
Yes. But, so we're talking about Akira today. 1988.
1990 for the West.
Yeah, directed by Katsuhiro Otomo. Probably one of the most important anime films of all time.
One of the most influential.
Yeah, definitely one of the most influentials. And this is going to be a weird conversation.
You love weird conversations.
I do, but to let everyone know, Akira is a movie that I hold in high regard as a technical achievement, with probably one of the most dense and incoherent stories I have ever seen.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this movie. I watched the trailer right before I watched the movie, and I was just kind of like, okay, that's going to give me more clarity about what I'm going to watch. And I was like, yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen in this movie.
Mm-hmm. And for time, how long did it take for the movie to completely take you out? It was when the children showed up, right?
When we see the first blue old person child, I was just like, what is going on?
After that, you were very confused because the movie decides to not explain anything.
No, because, I mean, you get glimpses of this man protecting a child, he basically gives his life for this child, and I'm thinking, oh my god, and you can tell that there's something off because, obviously, this kid is blue.
Yes.
So it's just like, okay.
And has weird psychic magic powers.
Well, I mean, you don't see that at first. You see, he's being shielded by the man, and after that, it's just like, okay, what is going on?
There's, biker gangs, there's a government conspiracy, there's giant metal supervillain kids at the end.
There's been a third world war. It's just complete chaos.
Yes. And it is a beautiful chaos.
I mean, visually, yes, it is a beautiful chaos. But story-wise, there's just a lot going on with the blue children, supervillains...
motorcycle gangs, terrorist organizations, government protests. So everyone out there, we'll do I don't even know if we can do a plot summary. We can do a pitch. Yeah, okay. What is the best way you could describe this movie to somebody in an elevator? Like, hey, I heard you saw this movie Akira. What's it about?
It's about this... I keep wanting to say it's like this dystopian version of Tokyo, where it's kind of, it's not the Tokyo that we know, it's this... Neo-Tokyo that we're seeing that's been rebuilt over, 30 years? Something
like that, yeah.
And it's just, you would think this rebuild would have progressed into something much bigger, much better, and it hasn't. It's just... chaos and people are miserable.
They've turned New York into Detroit. Why?
Yeah, it's something. but I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry, you caught me there.
But it does have cool motorcycle scenes.
It does have a lot of cool motorcycle scenes.
So that would be my selling point.
Yes, it's a movie with cool motorcycle scenes, some body horror, and there's a sick-ass Dragon Ball Z fight at the end.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I told you before we started recording. I'm like, yeah, that kind of reminded me of Dragon Ball Z. And you're like, oh, you did pick up on that. I'm like, I haven't even watched Dragon Ball Z ever. So it's like...
But you can tell. It's like, Tetsuo's hair. I know that haircut. I recognize that haircut.
I did. And I was just like, what is going on here? It's a little too suspicious.
Exactly. Well, that's probably the thing about this movie that's more fascinating than the movie itself. Because the movie itself is... a very interesting... It's a cyberpunk action film.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's cool. There's some government stuff. It's 2+ hours long. You'll get a lot out of it. But what's really interesting is all the shit people took from it. Because I got a list for you, okay? Now, there's the moment in the film called the Akira slide, where Kaneda slides his sick-ass red motorcycle across the screen, and it looks super cool.
And that's one of Tetsuo's memories when he's...
transforming into Tetsuo, the Iron Man.
And it's, we see a lot of Tetsuo's, like, backstory, and just to kind of see how he's molded into the supervillain.
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of like a nice break where he's remembering Kaneda's slide.
Yeah.
And it's just, basically Kaneda teaching him how to ride a motorcycle and, do like a suicide turn.
Mm.
And
it's really cool. Okay, so this is a short list of shows, movies, what have you, that have directly taken the Akira slide and have credited that, yeah, we took it from Akira. We have Batman the Animated Series, You're Under Arrest, Gargoyles, Airmaster, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's the 2003 to 2009 series, for those who were wondering. Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go. The fuck? Teen Titans. Star Wars The Clone Wars. Yu-Gi-Oh! Fresh Pretty Cure. Lupin the Third vs. Detective Conan. Pokemon Diamond Pearl. The list goes on.
That, and it's also something that we
just
see...
the slide.
Well, yeah, even, I'm thinking, like, the Nolan Batman movies, when we have the Bat Bike, and the bike turns that way, and it's like, yeah, that's what I thought when I was watching the movie. I'm like, I've seen this before.
The Bat Cycle from the Nolan movies looks a lot like Kaneda's motorcycle, except it's painted black.
It's painted black, the wheels don't do what the wheels do in Batman. This is more, you know... like an actual motorcycle.
I like how the anime, where it's like your imagination is your only limit, and they still made a more realistic motorcycle than Christopher Nolan did in The Dark Knight.
Just saying, that was a pretty cool looking motorcycle.
It is a pretty cool looking motorcycle.
Both of them.
But that's just that one image, just the slide with the motorcycle, right? And I know for a fact that there's this video. It's on YouTube. I think anybody here can look it up, and it's literally a hour-long video breaking down, I think, the first 5 minutes of Akira, maybe the first like 10, but it's something like that. It's an hour-long video. It's just breaking it down.
The first 5 minutes,
and it's literally just every visual because anime is unique in filmmaking, because every element you see is intentionally put there by a creative voice, right? Yeah. So everything you see in an anime, that's there completely intentionally. It wasn't like, oh, we caught that because the camera couldn't swing around this corner. No, everything in front of you is meant to be there. Yeah. So this guy breaks it down, and he's like, because this was kind of the first big budget animated film or anime film, he's like, there's so much detail-rich things going on here. It's animated at a frame rate that's so much higher than all the other anime films of the time, that breaking it down, you can pick out the way they move here mimics specific movements of real people. You don't have frame loss that you get in a lot of anime, where they're just like, oh, it's not nearly as detailed because, you had somebody have to draw the arm moving from one side of the screen to the other, so the in-between's a little shaky. Or the other parts where how the camera moves in this section, it's reminiscent of these things in this movie. And it's a very detailed breakdown of why this movie is so technically impressive. And it's only the first 5 minutes of the movie.
That, and this movie was also made on a nearly $10 million budget. Yeah. And not movie, animated movie.
So it's just a like cartoon. This was a $10 million cartoon.
And it's like, yeah, you could see why it was $10 million, because that is just so much that goes into this movie that, like you were saying, everything in the frame is in the frame for a reason. And it's just, you've got decaying buildings, you've got fences, you've got signs, and it's just...
You have signs, you have dirt on the ground, there's great grime on everything.
And, we watched we watched the dubbed version. Yeah. And
we actually watched the recent dubbed version, the good one.
It was in 2001 when we got the re-release, and they fixed the dubbing with new voices, they fixed the soundtrack. I guess it cost them another $1 million just to correct that.
Yeah. that's the thing, because the movie comes out in 89, and not to anyone's surprise, really, is this was a cult movie
Yeah.
for the longest time. It made a bunch of money in Japan, but people don't really hold on to masters of stuff like this, even back then. So, yeah, it would probably take $1 million just to recolor the fucking movie to make it, like, not so grainy on a re-release.
Yeah, and what I'm gonna get back to for what we were talking about with everything that they wanted us to see, it's like even with the dubbed version, when they were speeding past signs, they made a point of even putting subtitles on the screen to let you know what that sign said. So it's like everything, even down to the signs, are important in this movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it makes sense because the director of the film also wrote the manga or the comic book that it's based off of. And it was a big deal because the manga was really popular.
Yeah.
Like, I think Marvel Comics bought the distribution rights and they released it in America and whole 9 yards. And when the production company came to him, he would only release the rights to the movie if he could direct it and he had creative control.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Basically, he got the Orson Welles deal of anime. And he came out with a pretty fucking good movie. I mean, it's Blade Runner with some, cool tricks in it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it has a lot of influences from films of the past. It's influenced a lot of things in, modern day cinema and TV. But I know it's probably...
I have more.
Oh, I know you have more. But I know to you that this means a lot. It's also one of the few animated films that was released on the Criterion.
It's true. It's one of 3, I believe.
Yeah, it's up there with, let's see...
I know Fantastic Mr. Fox is one of them.
And Watership Down from 78.
Yes.
And I think this one's the third one.
Yeah. Which is really fascinating because I think this was only ever released on Laserdisc for Criterion.
It was.
Which, Laserdisc, it's coming back, boys. But speaking of, Laserdisc, other things... Well, I guess not Laserdisc, but the movie also has another bunch of influences on just anime series and manga. Things like Ghost in the Shell, Battle Angel Alita, Cowboy Bebop, Serial Experimental Land, Elfen Lee, live action movies, namely Tetsuo the Iron Man, Metal Gear Solid takes points from this, Final Fantasy VII takes points from this. Again, influences outside of anime. The thing that fascinates about me about this. The cultural impact on this movie is fucking everywhere.
Yeah, and that was like one of the major things that I was picking up was Cowboy Bebop, which you made me watch, I think, last year.
I tried to make you watch it.
I watched a good amount of episodes, but I mean, it was enough for me to be able to pick that up while watching this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's just an interesting thing when you watch the movie because, you can see things in, other animes. You can see things in a lot of movies. I mean, a big one is, The Matrix. The Matrix has stolen a lot from this movie.
I mean, I was even picking up, Stranger Things, where they have these gifted children and they're, they're testing them and they're pushing them to see, okay, what can your ability do next?
And they have these vague psychic powers that are never fully explained.
And I love Stranger Things.
Oh, I know you love Stranger Things.
So that's why it was cool to see, okay, I could believe it that maybe this would be an inspiration for the series. Mm-hmm. And just to see how many other movies and series that this has influenced. Yeah.
And I mean, I know everybody were harping on this movie has influence, but it's the big thing to talk about. It's kind of crazy how much this movie has influenced the world outside of it. Because let's talk about the movie itself just for a quick second.
Okay.
Because would you call this a good movie? And I mean that you were able to follow it, fully entertained by it, dug the was this a good movie you would watch again?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good movie, technical wise, story wise. It just wasn't really for me. Mm-hmm. There's other animes like Perfect Blue, which I really enjoyed the psychological thriller behind it. Mm-hmm. This to me was just kind of okay, if we were dealing with this World War III and, basically the city in shambles and it's basically, everyone's out for themselves because everyone's a threat.
Yeah.
I could go with that, but it's like once we started getting in like the psychic kids and the supervillains, it was just like
How the psychic kids are touching into genetic memories of the universe and amoebas into gods and
yeah, it was just a lot to grasp.
yeah, and I think that's something I want to talk about. Is this movie's story, its plot, is really dense and it does not really explain a lot to you.
Yeah.
Because I've seen this movie, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, I think, over the course of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I still can't 100% articulate exactly what's happening in the movie. Alright? And that's, for a lot of reasons, because I'm like, oh, this movie's really cool. There's fucking motorcycles and explosions. That shit's badass. But the other one is, I don't really know exactly what Akira is. I think he's like one of the psychic kids, but then he became like a god and went like nuclear.
Yeah, because we see like that, like for me it looked like a crown, but it was like the energy thing that they were just kind of like this is Akira.
Oh, this is our readings. This is the hologram of Akira's power level.
So I'm just like is that what Akira is? It's not like this god or this being. It's just force or energy.
Yeah, because the movie's talking a lot, and it's like subscribing godlike power and godlike knowledge to Akira the being, but then Akira's like, oh, he's creating another Big Bang within Tokyo, and then it's like, where did all the psychic kids go? Where does Akira go? Where does Tetsuo go? Because they disappear at the end. Did they go to the beginning of the universe? And that's
an alternate universe.
Like, does this deal with alternate dimensions? And see, and that's the thing. The movie's really thought-provoking, like, what's going on here, like, trying to, like, break it apart. But it's also, like, I could just read the manga, but, like, even Otomo didn't finish the fucking manga when he wrote the fucking movie.
And that was the thing at the end where, Tetsuo goes, and we just basically hear his voice, and I'm like, well, is that what Akira is too? It's just this... just this entity that's in the universe and can, reappear when it wants to or it needs to be summoned back.
Is Tetsuo like Akira now? Has he transcended?
That's the whole thing where, it's transcension's a big thing in this movie where it's just like, is that going to happen to everybody? Is everyone going to transcend into Akira? Like, is it like a cult?
Yep. That's another thing. We have the cult thing going on in the movie where they're worshipping Akira. And, like, literally they're worshipping Akira. Like, this thing in the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering... So Akira is able to communicate outside of its being, even though, like, we see what Akira is and he's just body parts in jars, right?
Yeah.
So Akira is able to, like, psychically, like, vibrate out into the universe, and he's like influencing these people, and they're creating this cult. And the movie, okay, is this movie a critique or a discussion on God and religion and what God could be or is?
I think this movie is a discussion on the possibility of anything, because it feels like so much could happen within the universe, and that's kind of what we get in this movie. It's just, we have the ability to have these individuals that could basically be like these demigod versions of themselves, which we get with Tetsuo, who, translates into Iron Man. And it's just like, okay, so if Tetsuo didn't have a shitty growing up experience, could he have been a superhero instead of more of like a supervillain?
Yeah, also... Tetsuo, when he becomes, like, supervillain Tetsuo with the, like, metal arm and shit.
Yeah.
That's, like... He needs to be in a Marvel movie or something.
That's
he
why I'm
looks
just
so
sitting there
cool.
like, what is happening? Because is it after he gets the metal arm where it's, like, the skin's trying to fuse back over the metal?
Yes, yeah. He gets the metal arm, and then his flesh starts to morph around it, and then he starts absorbing... things, and he turns into like this giant Cronenbergian body horror monster.
And he's like, swallowing up Canada with his arm, and it's just like, what is going on? Because it's like it's them fighting. They're fighting the whole movie, and it's Tetsuo telling Canada, "I could be my own person. You don't have to protect me. I'm not that little boy anymore that didn't have anyone to protect him."
Mm.
And towards the end, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to lose you, and I don't want to lose you either. And it's kind of sad to see the two of them ripped apart.
Yeah, because the movie does talk a lot about that, is like their friendship, their core friendship, and kind of like their power dynamics, because like Canada is obviously the leader. Like he's the one who actually makes decisions. He's the strong one. His whole thing is like this protector guy, and is very masculine, likes beating people up, and runs a street gang or whatever. And Tetsuo is kind of how would you describe Tetsuo? Kind of weak? Like weak-willed?
He's kind of like the little brother. Where, he's following around, and it's kind of like, all right, you're part of the pack, but it really, you're Akira's number 2, so it's like, we kind of have to let you be with us. And Tetsuo's like, no, I can be a leader on my own, I can do this. And he kind of takes a hard left turn when he...
As soon as he has power, he is corrupted.
Yeah, he starts killing their friends, the guy that runs the bar that they hang out in.
So, a score of nameless military henchmen.
Yeah, but just to show, like, the people around him, where it's like, you'd think, okay, they had an impact on me growing up, so I'm going to protect them, and it's just, no, he's just, mowing through people.
Yeah, I mean, the that's another thing, is like the power in this movie, because, the phrase, absolute power corrupts absolutely. As soon as Tetsuo has this godlike power, he does not take the turn of being, good, or at least helping his friends out. He turns into a fucking monster. Or
with great power comes great responsibility, and again, he just takes a hard turn.
Hard turn.
And it's just like...
right into the brick wall.
Yeah, hard right, and it's just like, no, I'm gonna go the evil way. It's just like... And I mean, that's another thing. We start to see slowly his powers when he's in the hospital bed, being able to have the cup of water, come to him.
Yeah.
And then we get the toys.
Is that Boo's nightmare fuel scene of the day?
Well, I was just like, okay, like, well, they have him locked up. How are these toys in here, I'm assuming he doesn't have any visitors. And then the toys come to life. And then the toys start leaking milk. They're like larger than life, and they're just like oozing milk. And I'm just like,
it's a fucking nightmare
I'm
scene.
like, what is happening in this scene?
And then Tetsuo like cuts his foot on a piece of glass, and then it turns out, it's the little blue kids, and they have like sending mental mind images to Tetsuo, and it's like, what the fuck?
And then you have the one blue kid that looks like, Professor X and his, flying
his flying little wheelchair.
And it's just like, what is happening? It's like, there's X-Men, there's little blue old people, children.
The next scene right after this is straight ripped off in Stranger Things, when they're in the little hospital.
Yeah.
And it's the flashing light, and the thing explodes, and there's blood everywhere. Like, I think I've seen that exact shot in, like, Stranger Things, or one of those, like, hospital... or like mob or hospital monster movie things.
Yeah, and it's just, because it's not like Stranger Things where it's, demogorgons and stuff. It's more that the people are the monsters.
Tetsuo's the monster.
Well, I mean, before that, Tetsuo's just another kid. Yeah. And then...
another dirty delinquent.
Another, biker kid. Because we have so many of those.
Where are these kids getting these fucking motorcycles, by the way?
I mean, because that,
fucking Tetsuo's like 15, and he's got a fucking Harley. Where are you getting that? He stole it, right?
I don't know. I wish I had a sweet, red motorcycle with a Canon sticker on it, just to show, I'm into photography.
Is Canada into photography? Is that what the Canon sticker is?
To me, that looks like the Canon logo.
Do you think Canada, when he's not, rolling around on his hog, knocking people with pipes, chasing down, beating up street gangs, he's out saving K. He's out in the country, taking nice still life, maybe in some nice tasteful black and white on his Canon.
I mean, why not?
Oh,
You got the bike, you could just speed through traffic, and oh, okay, perfect. I'm gonna take this landscape shot before golden hour.
Does Canada strike you as like a landscapes guy? Maybe he's one of those like urban photographers. Takes people takes picture of the gangs he's beaten up, and he's like, look at the plight of the city. Oh, look at the world around me.
Or architectural.
Could be an architect guy.
Architectural, kind of journalistic to show just the decay of home around him.
Ah, yes. Tetsuo, or Canada.
Canada.
He's truly a repressed artist if I've ever seen one. Oh.
Also, what does the pill mean on the back of his jacket?
I have no idea.
That's how I was sitting there, and I'm like, okay, it's a pill, but I'm like, but what does it mean? I'm like, maybe they're going to say it later in the movie. No.
I wonder if it's a thing where they're supposed to be like drug runners, and he's like an amphetamines drug runner, and that's why he has the little pill thing on there, but that's also like dumb.
Or is he a hard pill to swallow, and then he just comes and punches you in the face?
That might be the most edgelord bullshit I have ever heard in my fucking life.
You're welcome.
Oh, sweet Jesus Christ. That was so fucking bad.
It's an answer. You're welcome.
It is an answer. I give you that. All right, but yeah, like, I like how we just get all that because of the fucking Canon sticker. But I do, what the fuck are we talking about? I got lost.
We were talking about something.
Whatever, let's keep rolling, because all in all, I think this movie is really interesting. I think there's a lot of chewable themes. I think it's executed pretty well. Like, technically, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah. It's
just like the plot, the character, the story stuff. It's interesting once you maybe take a step back and you kind of chew on it, like, like a piece of art. It's like the toffee of cinema.
I'll say, how much are you chewing on?
Don't worry about it.
Is that why we don't go to museums as often? Are you chewing on displays?
I mean, I'm just saying, Rembrandts are delicious.
Oh, wow.
But with this, it's like watching it, I really enjoyed it as kind of a weird sci-fi action flick. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of what it is at the heart of it. It's like a sci-fi action flick that has some pretty decent chewable themes to it.
Yeah.
Because, like, the big ones it's talking about, like, God, power, corruption, government, family, friendship. It hits a lot of beats.
Yeah. And it's like, what do you latch onto? Because the movie moves at a good pace.
Yeah.
But it's just, if there's an hour-long video breaking down the first 5 minutes, it's like, is this a movie that you have to keep watching over and over and over again to pick up, even more that you missed out the first couple of times?
I would think so. I mean, again, I think I said this was my 5th time seeing it, and I definitely get a lot more out of it every time I watch it. This is definitely one of those movies. Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting because this is the first time you've ever seen it, like, at all. So I'm just curious, if somebody were to see this for the first time, would you recommend, like, watching it a few times before you decide if you like it or not?
I mean, I think I'd have to ask if they watch anime to begin with, because if they do, then it's like, well, yeah, absolutely, go watch it. But if they're going to be like, okay, I want to, start watching anime, should I jump into this first? And it's like, I don't know, this
would probably not be a good jumping on point.
No, it feels like a very jam-packed movie, and it's like, and I'm still trying to process and figure it out, and it's like, well, I don't want to give it to somebody else and be like, what did you just, throw me into? I'm like, I don't know. I'm there too. The deep end of
the pool, that's what I threw you into.
I mean, you got, the children that they're trying to protect and trying to figure them out at the same time. You have
this weird government council that's, like, destroying the country.
They're destroying the country. You have the spies that are going in and trying to help.
But one of them's a double agent, and it's...
Yeah, and I was like, are we going to get a triple agent? Please let us get a triple agent.
Oh, God. And then not only that, you also have, like Tetsuo transformations going on, mm-hmm. and the movie is jamming a lot of information and a lot of plot.
Yeah.
In, granted, a pretty decently sized movie. The movie's over 2 hours.
Yeah.
But it really feels like this should probably have worked better as, like, a series.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, because it's sensory overload to the max.
Yeah, because I believe the manga series it's based off of, it's like over 1,000 pages, probably more. I think when the director Katsuhiro Otomo was doing storyboard work and basically putting the movie together,
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Oh, my original notebook was it was like 3,000 pages, but don't worry, I chopped it down to a reasonable, precise, like 750 pages. Like, we're just gonna go with 750. That'll be fine." But even then, you're paring down like thousands of plus pages of material,
Yeah.
and you're cutting a lot out. And it's like, we only keep the important stuff. But it feels like there's so much outside of this movie that I just want context to.
Yeah, and I agree with you where this probably should have been a series.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you know, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour per episode, at least, you know, you could kind of build up and it's like, okay, now I understand this better. Now I understand that better. Now I see the connection of this and that. But with this, it's like they're trying to put everything in there at the same time. And it's like, okay, you got to absorb all this information. And it's like, if I keep absorbing, I'm going to be just as big as Tetsuo. Because there's just so much depth in this movie.
Yeah, and I think I would recommend this to people. I think I would. I would definitely say it's like, if you're into anime, it's a much easier watch. But I think if you're into just movies that are popcorn flicks on the surface that are saying deeper things, I think you could dig it.
I'd even think if you're like into art house that this would probably be in that wheelhouse of an
Yeah.
art film.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like a John Carpenter movie, where it's a genre flick on the surface. Everything about this is genre.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely something underneath, that there's an artistic voice behind everything. And there's reasons why everything's on screen and it's presented the way it is.
Is it reminding you of Escape from New York?
Oh, yes, incredibly.
Anything for us to talk about Kurt Russell.
Escape from New York is a masterpiece. But that's the thing. Like, if you watch this movie, like, watching the movie, it kind of looks like Escape from New York.
Yeah, and Escape from New York, Blade Runner.
Yeah.
It's like you can see
a little bit of Alien thrown in there.
A little bit of Alien thrown in there, yeah. You could see, you know, movies of the past, shows of the past. But it's just like, it leaves you wanting more, because I feel like I didn't, you know...
Get all of it?
Get all of the story.
And I wonder if that's why so many people gravitated towards this movie. Because I know people like George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, the Wachowskis, they all saw this movie and they took things from the film and put it within their own work. I mean, the Wachowskis, it's apparent. Like, The Matrix is a live-action anime film. It takes things from Ghost in the Shell, Akira, even like Speed Racer in a weird way. Like, you can just see a lot of anime influence in The Matrix.
Yeah.
And with George Lucas, for the Star Wars prequel series, like, you see air of Akira, especially in Clone Wars. Or Attack of the Clones, like the second one. But also Clone Wars, like the cartoon series. Like, you see it in there. The cartoon,
but yeah, we also get, you know, Anakin on the speeder bike.
Yeah.
And we get those, you know, long shots of him going down the desert. And we're seeing that, you know, with Akira on the freeway.
And I think Anakin even does the Akira slide.
I'm pretty sure. Once we get to, like, the Tuscan village.
Yeah. And I mean, even beyond that, like, there's just a lot in this movie that I see in so many other things, which makes it so uniquely interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I think I keep coming back to this movie, is like, I just saw another movie that I can see has stolen something from Akira. Let me go back to Akira and see if I can, like, glean more out of it. And every time I go back to it, I glean a little bit more.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a pillar, and people just keep taking more and more influence from it, and from that, you know, this movie keeps growing bigger and bigger because it's influential.
It's a titan.
It's a titan, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, even like Studio Ghibli, they have taken stuff from this.
Yeah, and you could see, I mean, that's even, you know, a point of discussion is just, there was war in the previous movie that we watched, there's war in this movie, and it's just different to see the extremes of war in the two movies.
Yeah.
Where we have, you know, the characters like in Howl's Moving Castle, where they don't want to be in the war. They try to, like Hal tries to escape the war. And in this movie, it's like they have, no choice. There's, bombs going off. There's just absolute insanity going on, and they're just, immersed in it.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing. The movie has like this definite cultural commentary because, like, they're talking about like World War III, and this is like the aftermath, the destruction of Tokyo, and this is what all these people are living within, and all these things. It's talking about, after World War II, and Japan was completely decimated and had to basically rise from the ashes and create basically modern Japan.
Yeah.
And I think Akira is commentating on that. Like, the delinquents, the quote-unquote, like, juvenile delinquency that ran rampant in Japan and Japanese society in, like, the 60s, 70s, 80s, so on and so forth. That was a result of, World War II happened, these, big, huge cultural moment. It rebuilt from the ashes into, like, a more modern society, and because the rebuild also had, like, Western influences in the United States because of a whole geopolitical thing. Not a history podcast. Like, you had Western influences on Japan, and then, like, there's delinquency out of that because there was excess and this and that, and the movie is definitely a product of not only its time, but its culture, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, there's even I'm still trying to think of like movie references and this and that.
You want a few of them? All right. Let me throw some at you. So, Ready Player One, Dark City, Chronicle, Looper, The Dark Knight, Midnight Special, Inception, Godzilla, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Fun fact: every director who made those movies stated explicitly that Akira was an influence, in one way or the other.
But I was also thinking, like, the stuff with the biker gangs and, this is my territory, we're gonna, destroy this town that we come to. Kind of reminded me of Brando in The Wild One. Yeah! Where they, come into the town and they kind of take over and there's a fight with another gang that comes in and it's just like, okay, it's just, seeing those subtle references.
Yeah, like that teenage rebellion.
Yeah. The angst, the anger.
That's a lot of the movie. It's like, it's that youth of rebellion.
Yeah.
Because, what is it? Kei, she's a youth and she's rebelling. She's rebelling against the government. Tetsuo, he gains all this power and he's rebelling against, like, everyone around him. And even Kaneda, like, with the small amount of power he has of his gang, he creates that family unit and he's just rebelling against, like, society. He's becoming the juvenile delinquent. And it's just interesting that the movie has this air of rebellion to it. And this feels like a punk rock fucking anime movie.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's Akira. Is there anything else you wanted to jump on?
No, I mean, this was more your movie. I thought you liked the movie a lot more.
I appreciate the hell out of this
Or not liked
movie.
it, but I thought you loved this movie.
Yeah, like, that is a thing where it's like, I appreciate this movie. I think this movie is incredibly important, enshrined in the pantheon of touchstones of cinema. Like, this movie is important. I appreciate the hell out of it. I like the movie a lot. It's just one of those movies that I never fell in love with.
Okay.
It's probably a movie, after you watch it like 12 times, you fall in love with it. I'm only on part 5.
So you got a ways to go.
Ways to go. But next week, this is a movie I've only ever seen once. And I fell in love with it immediately.
Are you sure?
I'm very sure.
Okay.
This movie's great. It's done by a director we've had on the show previously.
Okay.
It's also a movie that has a lot of influence. They would say Inception stole the plot of this movie completely. And this is Paprika, done by Satoshi Kon, the director of Perfect Blue.
And I did like Perfect Blue a lot.
Yes, and Paprika is very good. Very good. I was a huge fan of this. I saw this at the Frida Cinema in Santa Ana. It was a definite experience, and I think you're really going to dig this one. It's a lot more like psychological thriller, dreamy. I think you'll like this one.
All right, I'm excited.
Or you will find it far more dense and is completely inaccessible, that Akira will look like, Blue's Clues to you.
Oh, well, I think we're gonna have to wait till next week to see if I can figure it out.
Yes, and if you wanted to see that next week, where can they go?
Well, if you want to listen to us on a different platform than you currently are, you can find us on Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Yeah, you can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That's the Film Vault on YouTube, where you can watch our podcast, listen to them, and have some fun on the Film Vault YouTube. I said it 3 times. You have to go now.
You have to like, follow, and subscribe.
Exactly.
And if you want to, follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram at the Film Club Podcast, where we post about upcoming movies that we're talking about, our adventures, random facts about movies. And with that,
we'll see you next week at the Film Club.
Peace.